Hello, I'm Janice Robinson, Auburn Athletic Director for Student Athlete Enhancement. As a part of Auburn U program, we are committed to the holistic and comprehensive approach to the student athlete experience through the resources that promote personal growth, holistic development, professional development, athletic success, and overall well being of each student athlete. Auburn U is focused on the development of Auburn men and women. In support of the Auburn Athletics Task Force for Inclusion and Race Relations, Auburn U is excited to host a panel featuring 9 Black senior women administrators from the Southeastern Conference, including our moderator for today, Tiffany Daniels, who is the SEC Associate Commissioner and SWA. Let's welcome this impressive group of Black women as they share their journey to becoming senior level administrators in athletics.
Thank you, Janice. I appreciate that, and thank you for having us. As she mentioned, my name is Tiffany Daniels. I'm Associate Commissioner and Senior Woman Administrator at the Southeastern Conference. I'm excited to moderate this panel. I'm looking forward to chatting with these ladies on the topics that we have to cover today. So I think we should start off by having everyone introduce themselves. So as I look in my Hollywood squares, Maria, you are in the top left corner. So if you would introduce yourself with your name, your title, and how long you've been in this role in the SEC.
Thanks, Tiffany. Hi, everybody. I'm Maria Hickman. I'm at the University of South Carolina. I'm Executive Associate AD, SWA, and Chief Diversity Officer, and I've been in this role for 2 years.
Thanks, Maria. Linda?
Hello, everyone. Linda Teeler, Executive Associate Athletic Director at the University of Florida, and I have been here for almost 18 years.
Thank you. Anne?
Hello, everyone. I'm Ann Carr at Mississippi State University. I am Deputy Athletic Director, Chief Diversity Officer, and Senior Women Administrator. I've been in my role for 17 years. Thank you.
Good morning, Tiffany.
Good morning, everyone. Tiffany Grimes at the University of Alabama. I'm our Deputy AD, SWA, and Chief Diversity Officer.
Thank you. Kristen?
Howdy and good morning, everyone. I am Kristen Brown, Deputy Athletic Director, Senior Woman Administrator, and Chief Diversity Officer at Texas A&M University, and I am coming up on a year in my role.
Thank you. Christine?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Christine Kelly, coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee, Vanderbilt University, where I am the Deputy Athletic Director for Internal Affairs, SWA, Chief Diversity Officer, and Deputy Title IX Coordinator. And I've been here a whopping 5 months.
Good deal. Dorita?
Good morning. Dorita Dawkins, Deputy Athletic Director, Senior Women Administrator, like everybody else, Chief Diversity Officer, Title IX Coordinator, et cetera, since September of 2019.
And last but not least, our host, Auburn University, Monique.
Good morning, everybody. Monique Holland, Senior Woman Administrator, Senior Associate Athletic Director, and as Dorita said, et cetera, at Auburn University. I've been here for 2.5 years.
Good deal. Thank you, everyone. So let's jump right in. As I look across the screen, Linda and Ann, you two are the longest tenured of this group of SWAs. In the last 7 years, the Senior Woman Administrators room has morphed and changed to include women with more diverse experience, particularly more women of color. Can you talk about what it means to see more women of color in this space?
Sure, Tiffany, I'll go first, and I appreciate you not saying the oldest. Ann and I, we are the longest tenured. So, coming into the league, I think, the room was full of really women who had done a lot in their roles, a lot of experience, but it wasn't terribly diverse, whether that's age or ethnicity. And I think over time, one thing that this says to me is there's a lot of women of color in this league that are holding executive positions on campus. And that is really important for the student athletes that we serve to see women in leadership roles on campus, Black women, with authority and doing things on campus. And I'll say sort of second is that this is proven to be a really good training ground. We have, 2 African-American women that are serving as A5 athletic directors at this point, and both of them came up in this space. And so I think it is really significant. It's a huge point of pride, I think, for all of us that these roles are significant. They're held by Black women on campus, and this proves to be a really good training ground for what's next.
I agree with Linda. It was, as I came up and being a former student athlete, it is always wonderful to be able to look and see women of color in a role, an executive role. And when you don't see that a lot, students don't always think that they belong in those positions. And so when you're able to look around the table and see others who look like you, it helps you. And so it has been, for me, to come into the room and see other women who look like me. It helps me become better because I always want to represent the women in the SEC when I'm in other places, to make sure that I represent them in a way that they are very proud of me when I step into that room. But this has really been great for me to be able to see women move up and universities realize that women of color can be in the executive roles. And so we want to continue to strive to make sure that we are doing that for the ladies, not just saying put a woman of color in a position, but a woman of color who can actually do the work. And you look around this room right now and you know that these ladies are exceptional in whatever they do. And believe you me, they are very good at what they do.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you talk about the opportunity for not only your student athletes, but other up and coming administrators within the athletic department. And then I think the other part of that, because I talk to my kids, my girls, I have 2 daughters, a lot, and trying to make sure that they have the proper images to be able to see themselves in the opportunities for excellence and growth and leadership. So I think all of those things are important. So I go from the longest tenured senior woman administrators, and I'm going to transition to probably our 2 newest members. Kristen joined us during the pandemic, and then Christine did as well, transitioning to Vanderbilt. Dr. Kiki Baker-Barnes, who's the AD at Dillard, shared that to lead in athletics, you really have to know who you are and have to be comfortable with that person. And again, that's something that I talk to my kids about a lot. So can you talk a little bit about, and we'll start with you, Christine, what does it mean to be unapologetic in how you show up? Do you find yourself negotiating your identity, and just kind of talk about, if so, how? What does that look like for the 2 of you? I'll start with Christine.
Thank you for that question, Tiffany. And honestly, I think for me, it's bringing your best self every day, because you can only be who you're not, but for so long. And eventually the real you will come out. So at some point, you have to be able to be who you are and be comfortable in who you are. Now, I'm also a realist in knowing that I've been in this business for 20 years. I've established myself where I hope people respect me. So I know that I can do that. I know other people, particularly women, may not be at that level just yet. If you're new to the business and you're out there and you want to do different things and show your personality, and realizing that people are still getting to know you, you may have to negotiate your identity just a little. But I don't mean to ever take away from who you are as an individual. But it's so important to show up and bring your best self, because it's exhausting not being your best self when you can't be who you are and you have to come home and be a totally different person. It's really important to just, be your best self and bring your best self every day, and also take time for self. So that I think that's really important in terms of not necessarily having to negotiate identity. But if I'll add one more thing to that, also in the social media world, where we may want to say certain things, and the reality is silence can never be misquoted. So there are certain things that we probably need to not say on social media. So my best self is a very open sports information director background. I want to tell the world everything, and realizing that I can't necessarily do that, not only in this role, but just in the world that we live in.
Kristen, you have something that you want to add there?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks again for the question. I think for me, you know, the older I've gotten, the more confident I've become in myself and realize that I don't have to negotiate who I am and my identity. 10 years ago, me without question would have negotiated who I am, hesitant to be me, hesitant to speak my mind, hesitant to really put myself out there. But as I've grown, as I've had experiences both personally and professionally, they've led me to become more confident. They've led me to find my voice and find really who I am. But then also I feel like I haven't had to negotiate my identity because of the places that I've worked. I've been really, really fortunate in my last two positions, this one and then my most previous one, that, you know, I've been valued for who I am. And that's exactly why I've been in those roles and in those positions, because I've been valued and supported. So I haven't had to negotiate my identity. And I think if I were ever in a position where I felt like I had to do that, then that, you know, quite frankly, wasn't the place for me. So I've been really, really, you know, fortunate for those reasons.
Thank you both for that. I find myself, the answers that you provided and that the insight and your experiences are very similar. And we probably all across the board have experienced such. When I was younger, it was difficult for me to feel like it was okay to put the full me out there. And so I think finding your voice and the experience of being in these spaces provides people with the confidence to be able to put forth their best self and more of themselves. And then I have to think, you know, I've been in the sports business for about 20 years, and it seems that my patience for the part of, you know, kind of not putting forth my best self. I think they say when you get older, your filters start to shrink. So I think the filter starts to shrink a little bit, and you don't have the ability to kind of, people brought me to this table because they expected to get my experience and they expected to get my thoughts and opinion, and they value that. And so I think the things that you ladies have pointed out, Christine and Kristen, are really, really important. Now, that's not to say though, that at times, you know, however you look at that question, either way, it can be exhausting because as I think through, and I'll even go back to the events of last summer, I found myself just physically tired and exhausted. So either way you answer that question, to exist in these spaces not created for you is and can be exhausting. So Tiffany, can you just talk a little bit about what ways have sport organizational cultures, so values, assumptions, how has that impacted you as a Black woman?
Thank you for the question, Tiffany. One thing that I left out during the introductions is that I've been in this role for about 1.5 years at Alabama, but this is my 5th year at the institution. And I've reflected a lot over the past 1.5 years because I've gone from being a doer to a leader very quickly. And as we all know, there's not a handbook for that. And so in terms of assumptions relative to being a Black woman, I started to experience what those assumptions were as I transitioned into the leadership role. And it's a lot different when you're interacting with folks as their manager as opposed to their peer. And so what I learned is, and it was exhausting for a period of time because I was trying to negotiate my identity. I was very cautious with my delivery. I was cautious with, you know, not asking people to come to my office for a meeting, but rather going to theirs. And so every little thing I was doing, I was making sure it came off in the right way. And that it took a toll on me, especially over the course of the events of this summer. And so I transitioned into a place where I, like you said, Tiffany, realized that I was brought here because I was valued and for a certain skill set, and really started to take this opportunity to repudiate those stereotypes and those assumptions and to be in a place of educating. And I think that's achieved by showing up every day, day in, day out, being your authentic self and doing a great job at what you're responsible for. And it's hard to fight that battle by yourself. But what I can say is that I'm very fortunate, like you mentioned, Kristen, to have an athletics director who shows up day in and day out for me. And he set the tone for what it means to respect me and to value me as a member of our leadership team. And so for that, I'm thankful because I don't ever feel like I'm on the battlefield alone.
That's helpful. Anyone else have anything to add there? I know that you know, we spent Dorita, I'm gonna stop talking. Dorita raised her hand. Yes, Dorita.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think unlike a lot of the women on this call, I was not an athlete. But I think the fact that I have 3 brothers and 4 male first cousins and only 1 female first cousin trained me. I came into this business, again, not as a student athlete, not having coached, but having had men push me all the time and being used to, as I said in an article, when I first became athletic director of Division II school, I'm used to playing with boys. So I was full of confidence in that way. So I feel really fortunate that my brothers, you know, pushed me out of trees and, you know, everything else that I feel like kind of got me ready to walk into these spaces, feeling like I belong there. And in some instances, even letting people know in sometimes not so subtle ways that I know you don't think I ought to be here, but let me show you that I should be. So I think I had the benefit of that bravado, if you will, that being a tomboy created in me before I ever stepped into this field, and came in at a, you know, late 20s, early 30s, and was myself right off the bat, because I was like, I really don't know how to be anybody else. So this is what you get. Hopefully it is what you wanted, because I didn't cover it up on the front end. So let's enjoy this together. So I reflect on the conversation that you all have had so far, and just thought, wow, that hadn't been my experience. But I know it has to do with who Billy Ratcliffe pushed me to be.
Yeah. Linda, I saw you take yourself.
Yeah, so, you know, I think though, I want to go back to maybe Christine's point about, you know, there's a long list of things that we need to do. And part of that is also some self-care, or however you want to term that, because there is a level of exhaustion, you know, the coming into a room. And, you know, one of my roles is I oversee our men's basketball program. So I walk into a room and everyone's looking for the person they can bring their men's basketball questions to. Well, you know, it's me. And you might go around the room and look for every other face, but you're going to have to talk to me, because that, in fact, is the job I've been assigned. And there is a point when that goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on. And it's not that we aren't built for it. It's not that it's, you know, it takes too heavy of a toll. But I do want to acknowledge that there is something exhausting about that. And in this last period here, where all of us, whether we wanted to be the expert in racism and social injustice, whether that was something that was a personal interest of ours or not, we were all placed in those roles. And there is something after a while that is exhausting about continuing to make the same points over and over again. Again, we are totally built for it. Every one of us is up for the job. I think people that are listening to this, you're up for the task. But there is a point where you need to get with your support system. Some of us in this room serve in that role, and you know what, and let it out a little bit, because that takes a toll to be a consistent educator, supporter, pusher, you know, prodding. There's something that at some point you need to let it out a little bit, because it can wear on you.
Yeah, Linda, you bring up a couple of good points just that resonated with me, just kind of thinking through um, last summer and our conversations within our SWA room and the role that we were all thrust upon, whether that was your mantle or not. And our student athletes, right? Because, you know, in a lot of instances, your faces are the executive leader that they look to because they see themselves in you. And so, you know, I think that, you know, Maria, one of the things that I'm wondering is, you know, in your role, you know, at South Carolina, you know, just having to walk through that space with your student athletes. How did you make time to uplift them and to educate them about the power of their voice, but then manage your own feelings and where you were with managing how you took in what we saw on television and the ensuing protests after?
Yes, I mean, I think that's a great question. And looking back, I mean, it was a lot. I mean, and I think we all went through it. But it was giving the student athletes a safe space, and especially our students of color, and some of them being the only one that looks like them on their team, to have a space and know that there's other people who feel the way that you feel, and we're trying to figure out what we feel. I mean, in that moment, emotions were everywhere. So it was not only doing that for our students, but I did that for our Black staff. We had never had a meeting where all of our Black coaches and staff came together and voiced concerns. And I'm telling you, it was beneficial for me to hear it, because you could think that our culture was one way, but then when I heard some of those conversations, it was eye-opening of some things that we needed to address here. I mean, I took that to our administration and to our AD, and we addressed it. But then going back home, I had young children, and so having those conversations with my sister and thinking, I have a young Black son. How am I going to have this conversation with him one day, and how am I going to raise him in a world that we're living in? And it was actually getting those emotions out and having those conversations with my mom and my sisters and some of my friends to express it, because you can't hold it in. And when you did hold it in, it was like you were going to burst. So I think just having those safe spaces to have conversations, it helped me. And I think it helped some of the people here on our university, in our campus.
Anybody else want to add to that before we transition a little bit?
Tiffany, I'll just say, in my perspective, while I wasn't here in the SEC at the time, I was living in New Hampshire, which is 93% white. And at the time, I was the only African-American person on the senior team. So that was already in the entire history of that particular institution. So when all of this happened, it was a lot. And it was a lot because most of our staff don't look like me. Most of our coaches don't look like me. So how do you help educate people who don't live what we were living every day? And a part of that was me being as open and honest with our AD to say, hey, here's some of the things that we need to do. I don't profess to be an expert in this area, but there are other people who are out there who are. So if, you know, our value is where we put our money. So yes, if it's going to cost us money at this point, yes, I know we're in a pandemic, but if we value our staff and the few, few people of color on our staff and the few student athletes that we did have at the time, we need to put our money where our mouth is. And we did that. We were able to bring in Jen Fry, and she had, because again, that's what she does for a living. And she had a really, really great conversation with our staff, with our student athletes, that made all of us think, not just our, folks who weren't of color, but others as well. And I just thought that that was interesting. That was eye-opening, again, because similar to Maria, at the time, my son was 16. So here I have a Black 16-year-old son in Lily White, New Hampshire. How do I have that conversation with him? My husband is a bigger Black man in New Hampshire. How do we have those conversations? How do we protect each other? And one of the things that I said to our staff is, when your kids go down the road, do you worry about them? They were like, no. I said, well, I do. So that's how that impacts me. And just having open, honest conversation, and you can disagree without being disagreeable. And that's okay. That's the point of all of these types of conversations. So that was really eye-opening and very helpful for me throughout that process.
I'll tell you, just like everybody identified, it was a trying time. And so I was trying to figure out my mantra started to become protect my peace. And so as I thought about that, I tried to identify ways in which I could go and step away, find a little bit of joy. Monique, so for me, that's working out. It was walking away from Zoom, because in the pandemic, right, this is how we have managed through the last year, being in little boxes on our computer screens. So Monique, talk to me a little bit about how do you make time for joy, and why is it important to you?
I would say this, Tiffany, thank you for the question. And I feel like this is a more lighthearted question than the others, so I appreciate that. Because I feel like joy can be found in, just the beauty of our everyday lives. And so when I reflected on this question, I thought about the spaces that bring me joy that are, it just happens naturally. It's not intentional. Even though I had to bring intention to this question, I started thinking about it like, there's so much joy in my life I don't even think about. So if you don't mind, I'll just say a few of those things. The first thing I thought about is, and I hope my staff will agree, because I had such amazing advocates as a student athlete and as a young professional. And I always go back to Mary McElroy and how much she was an advocate for me. And I hope that my staff will say, because I find so much joy in being an advocate for them and serving them and helping them, especially navigate through the last year, considering all the uncertainties. If you all remember, a lot of institutions immediately were talking about furloughs and terminations. And of course, that brought a lot of anxiety. So I hope that I was able to be a sense of support to my staff. But I love and appreciate, and it brings me so much joy to be an advocate and see my staff advance or propel in their own space because of my advocacy. I would say the same thing for our student athletes. There is so much joy in still being able to change the trajectory or be a part of the trajectory of someone's life, a young person's life. I get emotional because that's a responsibility that I carry so much passion about. I was listening to President Obama's Audible, and I don't remember exactly, but I remember him referring to an individual question his visit to a hospital where we had wounded warriors, right? And they said that he wouldn't be able to make decisions, I guess, unemotional decisions, if you will, because he's now connected to them. But I disagree. Me being up close and personal and having those relationships with our staff and our student athletes allows me to be more compassionate and sincere about when I'm making decisions and understand the impact my voice, my decision-making has on their lives. Even though that part is heavy, I still have so much joy that I'm being trusted to make those decisions. I'll transition a little bit into my personal life. You all know how much I love my family. And I hate to say, especially my nieces, because I love my nephews too. But I do have a special bond with my nieces and my great nieces. And this summer would be my summer. I'd have my girls trip with my great nieces. There's usually about 9 of us, and we're planning to go to Washington, D.C., but the pandemic may pause that. So not being able to spend time with them this summer or throughout the year, my family, I have found so much joy in my friendships. I went to school in Alabama, so being close to Montgomery and Atlanta, and even my new friends in Auburn, and oh my gosh, this group of ladies, I have just found so much joy in those relationships, just really being more present in those relationships, right? So while I thought my time away from my family would be would really be, I guess, a downer in my life, just having friendships. And this group of ladies, I tell you what, I enjoy our weekly meetings. As you know, we all be doing some side chats and having a good time. But more importantly, this group of ladies, I'm listening to them. And this is how I feel after every meeting. Monique, you got to step up your game. These women are sharp as heck. They don't even realize how much they're motivating me to be unapologetic in this space. They don't know how much they motivate me to be confident. I mean, I just love it. But more importantly, there's so much joy in this friendship because I feel renewed and empowered when I hang up every week. So thank you, ladies, for that. 2 more things I'll say, Tiffany. Although I've spent more time being present in my relationships, I've spent a lot of time by myself. I live by myself. I have learned to be my own best friend. Actually, last week, I thought about those necklaces that have the 2 puzzles that says best friend. I said, I'm gonna buy my own and wear both of them, right? think about it. We always identify a best friend, but we never say we are our own best friend. I have learned, and I love me. I didn't realize how much I love me until this last year, but I have learned to be okay with saying no to things that interrupt my peace. I have learned to say yes to things that I want, regardless if people think I should or not. So I'm starting to be an advocate for Monique, which I don't think I've ever been in my life. And so I feel good about that. And the last thing I will say is, Tiffany, I have found so much joy in believing that I'm still making my mother proud. And that keeps me going. So I appreciate the question. But I love you, ladies. And Tiffany, thank you so much for what you're doing for this conference and for all of us.
Well, you're quite welcome. A couple of things there, just kind of listening to you. The opportunity to be find joy in the time by yourself. I can't tell you how much joy I found when school opened up and I could send everybody back to school and they weren't sitting there looking at me. So there is something to be. I love my kids, but to your point, we all need those moments for self-care. Linda talked about self-care. Christine talked about self-care. And very often, and we all have our capes on a lot of the time, and trying to put that cape down and figure out where we can be there for ourselves is an important piece. And I'll share with you, in 2020 was the first time I sat down with my daughters and we did vision boards. And my vision board, so we had two things, the vision board, and then we also had a one word. So John Gordon has a book called One Word, and it's about you not doing a resolution, but just identifying what your word for the year is going to be. So mine was rest. Okay. 2020 made me rest because it was a global pandemic, couldn't go anywhere. So that's fine. But the other piece to my vision board, and I reflect on it, it's still in I have it hanging in my closet. It says, the word no is a complete sentence. So you talked about that, Monique, the fact that I don't need to explain to anybody why I'm saying no, but I'm choosing to say no because that's what's right for me. And it's okay. Because we often, whether it's as women, as African-American women, whatever it might be, we feel like we have to do everything. So I appreciate that point. And then the last thing that I'll kind of echo on what you just said. So imagine me, for those of you that are listening or watching this Zoom, I'm leading these meetings and I see these little smirks come up across the screen, or somebody will just kind of bust out laughing, but they're by themselves, right? They're in the meet. It's because they're chatting with each other and having these side chat conversations. And it brings me joy because I'll just call them out and I say, Ann, I see you. I know you and Monique are, yeah, that's how that happens. But that's great, right? Because it means that we have identified, we have become friends as well as colleagues and building each other up. And so Monique mentioned it, but Dorita, you've been in this group for a while. How do you find support and camaraderie within this group? Monique talked a little bit about learning from everybody. So what does it mean to have this group of women to lean on in this conference?
It means a lot. The first thing that I thought of with that question, Tiffany, is the adage that you must show yourself friendly to have friends. And so I approach people like I want to be approached. I put the energy out that I want to receive. This is what I expect. I am disheartened by women in general and Black women in particular who don't find friendship with other Black women. I think that is something that may be emanating from within, so you might need to check yourself. So this is what I expect. Monique and I were actually in another conference together as senior women administrators. And we experienced a little bit of this in that conference. Some people moving in and out, but that feeling of camaraderie, that sense of family to some extent, the ability to celebrate, whether it is And AKA Founders Day or our Delta Founders Day or whatever. I mean, having those things, having those things to celebrate with each other, it really does mean a lot, because the adage of it's lonely at the top is lonely in the middle too in intercollegiate athletics, because the numbers in terms of representation still aren't equal to our representation in the industry as student athletes and whatnot. So it means a lot in that we can look to each other, and sometimes it doesn't take words, right? Like we can just look, and I know that I need to reach out to Monique later, or Christine can ask me a question knowing there is just going to be nothing to it but getting the answer if I got it. So I think that is really helpful. As I mentioned earlier, I have a family with a lot of boys. So this isn't what I grew up with. But I definitely appreciate the energy that comes. Earlier in my career, to get this, I would have had to reach out across multiple conferences. And we know that there are things that happen within our conferences athletically that we can't share with others. And in order to get the support you need, there's some details that it'd be easier to share, so there could be some context to the anguish that you're suffering or what have you, that you can't tell your friend in the ACC or your friend in Conference USA or whatever. And we have it in-house, so to speak. So it means a lot in that. I think it also sets the table for Carla Williams. It sets the table for Candace Story. And it tells people in nonverbal ways, like somebody taking a snapshot of this Zoom says, excellence may look differently than I thought it did. I say the SWA room in the SEC, arguably best conference in intercollegiate athletics, looks this way because some people finally woke up and said, you know what? This is what excellence looks like. It doesn't have to look anything other than who's the best person for this job. I'm sorry, Linda, I'm going to say one more sentence and I'm done. We don't have to limit ourselves by what we've always done. We can just do what's best. And right now, this is what best looks like.
Yeah, and if just sort of taking off on where Dorita left off, and I do want to hit back on a point Tiffany made is, when you're talking about stereotypes and, sort of working through some of those barriers, I think one of the things that's so clear here is we are competitive when it comes to what's happening on the court, the field, the pool, but there is zero competition among the women in this group. And I think, when you go into work settings, that's often sort of, what's laid out there. Women can be really competitive with each other. They don't want the other one to succeed. There's only hands up on the ladder here. There's no pushing down. It's only hands up. And again, I could not have been happier the day that Carla was named the AD at Virginia, or Candace was named the AD at Vanderbilt. And, many of us in this room aspire to be that, but their success is only a blessing to me. That's only a joy to this group. And so I think, when we're talking about, what people perceive about women working, in executive roles, you can put that aside, because this is only about support and only about helping the next person get better, achieve what they're hoping to achieve. And there's a lot of support in that. And I feel, I think it's unfortunate if there are women in the workplace that don't feel that same support and that hand up.
I'm going to warn you, I'm going a little bit off script here, because Linda, you said something that jogged a thought. the designation of senior woman administrator has been pretty controversial over the last 8-10 years. What I've found is the definition of senior woman administrator and why that role, the designation, was created. Because just as a reminder for those that are listening, it is a designation. It is not a job per se. It's a job, but it's not a job per se. It's a designation. And it doesn't mean that all I do is the women's athletics at the Southeastern Conference, which a lot of people tend to think about. I think that, so the role has changed since maybe the designation was implemented, and it was implemented at a time that was necessary to ensure that there was diversity in leadership in the room. And so what I see has transpired since the designation was created is the roles and the positions and the titles of the women that serve in that role has changed tremendously. And so you also find as well, there are women that run away from the designation because they feel as if it will pigeonhole them in a box of some sort. So I'm going to open this up to anyone to answer, but can you talk a little bit about that designation as well as has it helped you? Has it hindered you? What are your thoughts on this topic? Because it's a continued topic that comes up, and we haven't been talking about it recently because all we're talking about is COVID the last year. But it was on the table as a part of a bigger conversation. So I'll start with, I'm gonna put you on the spot, Christine. I'm gonna start with you. Has it helped you? Has it hindered you? What are your thoughts there?
For me personally, I think it's actually helped me, just because coming from a historically Black universities, believe it or not, the good old boy network exists there too. And some people don't realize that, but it absolutely does. I mean, there were times where the SWAs were called girls. I mean, that's just how bad it was. But I thought we should use it as an opportunity to educate. What is this designation? What does it mean? And then also to emulate that in my daily work. So whomever comes after me, hopefully will gain the respect that this particular designation deserves. Other than that, I will say throughout my career, I've had that designation and I've used it to the best of my ability. And I think it's only helped me. But I also recognize, because things have changed, we now go from it being the highest ranking female official in the athletics department to just, I want to be able to secure this person, so I'm just going to give them this designation. But really, they're really not the highest ranking female official. So I really hope that we're able to kind of get back to what it was, or change it if that's what we need to do. But I will say in my career, it's definitely helped me.
Anybody have anything to add there, Dorita?
Yeah, I know part of the debate has been, is it necessary anymore? And I would argue that it is still, because I don't think that enough people have had a change of mind. I can recall when I first came to the University of Arkansas, I did not have the SWA designation. And because I have had the SWA designation since 1999, people assumed, oh, you're the SWA. And they would tell people, Dorita's the SWA at Arkansas. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Julie Cromer Peoples is. And so the next question was, then what are you? And I'm like, well, I'm the other woman. As if, there was only room for one on the leadership team. And so I also feel like there is still some need for evolution. Tiffany, I texted this to Tiffany last night. Whenever I see senior women's administrator, it is like nails on a chalkboard to me. It irritates me to no end. You would be amazed at the number of people I have found their email addresses when I see something in D1 Ticker or in an article, a lovely article I read in the Atlantic, however, the title is because it just bothers me, because it perpetuates the idea that it is only about women's sport. And that is the place where I think we still have room for evolution and growth and understanding and education, because you will look across athletics departments and you will see deputy ADs, senior associates, whoever, as sport administrators, and they have one sport, two sports, and then you see the SWA have 12. I mean, again, what are we doing? What are we saying with that? Are we capable? Yes, we are. Should it be that unbalanced? In my opinion, no. Because I think it also has the potential to reduce our effectiveness by spreading this wonderfulness too thin.
Which goes back to exhausting, right, Linda?
So I land in a little different spot here. I almost never refer to myself, and I never use that designation when I'm introducing myself. And part of it, a little bit, goes back to what Dorita said. I think that designation gives sort of departments the feel that like they've done their job. I have a woman in a senior leadership role, and now my work is done. And I don't have to evaluate people on their skills and their abilities and their capacities. I got my one girl, right? And I can move on. And so I resist that designation, as well as there are plenty of women in our department who can take up the mantle of Title IX, who can advocate for female student athletes. And all of those questions and concerns, they don't need to come to one person. I am not the figurehead, right? I'm the most senior woman in our department, but there are plenty of women who are advocates. And again, I don't want to let everybody off the hook. All roads don't have to lead to one door. The only, in my view, because our system is set up in a way that this designation sort of fills different roles. If you want to be involved in the NCAA level or other, this is a role that is a designation that's set out in the structure. So that for me is when it is useful, because otherwise you don't have access to the system. So I think we need to change the system, because in the end, this could just be a call of senior leaders in the SEC.
That's right.
Executives in the SEC who are leading, part of a leadership team in their departments. And so I don't know if the time has come, but I feel like it often diminishes more our roles than it does help.
Yeah, and I can see certainly both sides. And Linda, what I find interesting too, you mentioned that you don't utilize that when you introduce what you do, and not intentionally, I'll be honest with you, but I don't either. And it is because I carry on so many different, I wear so many hats. There's so many different things that I do. And the senior woman administrator role at the conference office looks a lot different than what it looks like on campus. And so there's definitely a piece there. So Auburn brought us together because it's Black History Month. And during Black History Month, we have the SEC Network is doing a phenomenal job right now honoring the history of African Americans in the conference. And all of the advertisements and the commercials that you see on TV are doing the same thing. And we get a lot of messaging about paying reverence to African Americans, and particularly women of color, during this time from a leadership perspective. So Maria, we shouldn't just be talking about it though in February. We should be honoring that leadership all year long. And so just kind of thinking through, like, who are some of your inspirations and motivations that continue to propel you to the excellence that we've identified is in this room and with you?
Yeah, and I think we all have a lot of people that we look to for inspiration and motivation, and we could go through a long list, but there were a couple as I thought through this question that really stuck out for me, and it starts with my mom. I mean, I'm very family driven, and I have 3 sisters, so we grew up with 4 girls, and my poor dad was the only man in the family, but my mom was the backbone of our family, and through all the challenges and obstacles that was thrown through her, she showed my sisters and I how to be a strong Black woman. So we grew up knowing how to be confident and how to have a voice And I saw that firsthand. So I have to start with my mom because she still inspires me to this day. And I don't know how she does certain things that she do. And I strive to be that still one day. But then even professionally, I think I have to give my hat off to Christine Jackson, who works at Mississippi State with Ann. So when I went to grad school at Louisville, Christine helped me get my foot in the door into athletics. But it was very important for me to meet her and also be around her. Like, we talk about representation and how important it is. And early in my career, she showed me that you can be great in your profession, but you can be a great mother as well. So there was times I didn't think the two could go together, and that you couldn't be great in athletics in this male-dominated field, but still have a family and be able to hold it down as well. And she was that example for me. And I still say it to her today. I'm gonna be like you one day, Christine, as a mom, because she had her boys and she was unapologetic and she let it be known, I gotta go. I gotta be with my boys today. But she held it down in the office and did great things there as well. But not even in those two areas, nationally. She did things in the community. She was the president of N4A. She was so involved and she made it look so easy. And so she's one who still inspires me to this day, but it was really important for me to see that early on in my career and see that representation, that the two could come together and you could be in athletics and in this profession and still have that family and that you long for. And then I have to steal what Monique said. I mean, look at this room, look at the people on this call. And as she said, I mean, as you get on this call every day, it starts with you, Tiffany. I mean, we're in the best conference and you lead us. You lead not only this group, but you lead so many others in our conference, in the conference office, and on each institution. And we look to you for so much. So I think we have to give you credit. You motivate us every day. And we don't tell you that enough. But then there's also all the ladies on here. I mean, we do great things on our campuses and nationally. And we bring each other up. So I think each time we see each other and we see what each other is doing, it motivates you to want to step up and do more.
Don't make me cry. Thank you, Maria. I appreciate that. And so, you know, I will tell you all, the feeling is completely mutual. I learned so much from you, from the full group on our calls. And I think maybe it was Monique, I can't remember if it was Monique or Dorita said, I got to step my game up because, you know, this is a very, very experienced, knowledgeable, the decision-making and how we go through the process of making sure that we are providing the best opportunities for the student athletes of the SEC. The vast knowledge here is what continues to allow us to be the best in intercollegiate athletics. And so I appreciate this group as well. So I'm sure there are some younger leaders, you know, watching this and as well as student athletes. You know, we're kind of nearing the end of our time, but is there any advice that anyone would sprinkle to the younger professionals or to our student athletes, just kind of as they think through how they manage through this space, whether it be personally or professionally, with finding joy, finding time, or being the best at what they do? What would you say to a younger leader? Christine, you look like you really want to talk.
All I was going to say was, you know, in terms of curiosity and just travel where no one has traveled before, don't put yourself in a box. You know, for me to become an athletic director, it took me moving to New Hampshire. I'm an island girl, born and raised in St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands, living in cold New Hampshire. So again, don't put yourself in a box. Don't hold yourself back, because you never know what you'll experience and what those experiences will lead for you. But then the last thing I'll say is also bloom where you're planted. Wherever you are, do the best job that you can possibly do, and everything will take care of itself.
Very true. Very true.
So my 3 bullets are: never tell yourself no. There are enough people lined up to do that work.
Yes.
Be a student of whatever game you choose to play. Know the rules so you can use them. And know the pros and cons and make informed decisions. Don't react, make decisions, and you'll never have regrets.
I would just add, be open to constructive criticism. Everything you learn on social media, that is not always the truth. So identify someone, like an individual that's on this Zoom call here or someplace else, and someone you trust. I found that in Mary McElroy. Mary gave me some hard lessons early. And I'm just so thankful. One, I was raised to be respectful of people in certain positions, but also there was just something about her that showed me she genuinely cared about me. And so that's why I believe I'm in this seat today, because of the influence and the constructive criticism she has given me throughout my career. So find that person, that person that has your back then wholeheartedly.
And you leaned in a little earlier.
Thank you. I would just say find a mentor, and find somebody who is going to be positive around you. There's enough negativity in this world that you really need to find someone who is going to be encouraging, as opposed to always telling you something that is negative. Thanks.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I would end it there, but I want to learn a little bit about you, more than I probably know, because I know a lot about you, by the way. We've spent a lot of quality time together. But we're going to have a quick lightning round before we go. So I'm going to give you two choices, and you just have to identify which you are. Kristen, Beyonce or Rihanna?
Oh, Beyonce. I am in the beehive all day, every day, Beyonce. Not even close.
Let's see. I think I already know the answer to this. Christine and Monique, Peloton or Pilates?
Peloton.
Peloton all day.
Linda, Peloton or Pilates?
Pilates. I'm the most senior person in this group. I don't have time to be riding a bike like that. I need to be gentle on my joints. So learn some flexibility, be able to get off the toilet when I'm older. So nope, Pilates.
Love it. Love it. Maria and Ann, flats or drums?
I'm drums.
Ann? Now, okay, we get that from Ann a lot. So we're gonna move from that. Tiffany, flats or drums, because she can't answer.
Drums all day.
Got it. And then the last one, these are two of my favorites, so it's really hard to choose. Living single or in living color?
Living single.
Living single.
Living single.
I love them both. I can't pick just one. They were both too good.
I agree with that.
Same with me, same thing.
I couldn't dance, so living single kind of fit. And living color, all of that, fly girls, wanted to be, couldn't be.
So you weren't on the step team is what you're telling me.
No, I was cueing the music.
Ladies, it has been a pleasure. As always, we get together weekly, but the opportunity to spend this time has been really, really special, and I appreciate it. Monique, thank you for putting this together. This was really awesome, and I appreciate you allowing us the opportunity.
Thank you to these amazing women for their time and willingness to share their experiences with each other and with us. Thank you, Tiffany, for really creating an honest and personal dialogue. Thank you, War Eagle Production, for supporting and recording. Thank you to our AuburnYOU staff for continuing to create opportunities to develop our student athletes. War Eagle.